Welcome back to Rock Talk, brought to you by GrokTALK.com and the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. Mike is trying to get Dan on the phone. Dropping the number. Sometimes calling guests doesn't always work out the way we hope. Well, I'd like to thank Aaron for being on the show and sharing all that information with us. It's good to see lots of groups outside working to get better candidates. So, while we wait for that, let's see if we can come up with something else. We did want to touch on a couple other issues today that I know I made notes for, but I just handed all my notes to Mike with the phone number. Oh, I forgot to mention this. I did mention it in the pre-show. If you are a musician or a part of a band, or you know somebody who is in one, we are looking for custom music by you guys that we can use on the program. We would play your music, assuming we like it and it suits our purposes, and we would use it as background music, or we use it as intro music, or we would use it as lead-in music, or some kind of bumper music, and then we would give you credit, and you and your band or whoever, and let you know that that's where it came from. So we would be happy to. Let me put that on like that. You're back. Hang on. We would be more than happy. Watch the flash. More than happy to play your music on our program and give you credit for it, or your band, every time we play it. And so we'd like to have some more local music. It doesn't have to be local. It could be, you could be anywhere in the nation if you listen to the program, anywhere in the world, as long as it's yours and you give us the rights to play it. We will give you credit for that music. Now.
And a link to your website.
And if you have one, absolutely, in the posted version. So we don't have Dan. He left a message, gave him the number. Hopefully he calls us in. There's certainly plenty of other stuff we could be talking about. It's been, this is 3 weeks technically since we were last on the air, so there hasn't been any Grok Talk to speak of, but lots of things have been going on in the interim.
Indeed. We had 1 week down at the Home on the Range with Andrew Hemingway. Skip and I were down at the Londonderry Fish and Game Club, and last week we did Grok Talk sort of late in the day with live on location at the Exeter debates. But this is in studio where we can bat around some ideas, bat around some Rhino Republicans, and generally have a good time.
I'm going to email Dan, and hopefully he sees it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's been an astounding week, and as we mentioned early in the show, David Cameron is showing a renewed sense of purpose and fortitude in facing down the evil which is creeping across Europe, frankly. What the readers may not know, although it was covered by Stacey McCain at theothermccain.com and by Pete Detect Guy at detectguyblog.com, which is that the UK already has nasty infestations of Sharia law and Islamic behavior, such as gangs and trapping and grooming young girls, including white girls, for Muslim male pleasure is the only way to describe it. They had a case of it in my home county of Derbyshire a year or so ago, but there's been a particularly nasty scandal in Rotherham, which is a town in Yorkshire, where there's a particularly large, what the British call Asian presence, and we don't mean Japanese, we mean anywhere east of the Middle East. And these are mostly Islamic types, unfortunately. And what has been happening, as I say, is young girls have been getting abused, and the towns are practically run by Sharia law, and it got to the point where the police forces and the social services knew there was abuse going on, but they were too scared to get out of the politically correct cocoon and actually call evil evil. And there's been big newspaper stories and a lot of embarrassment over there. So with that going on at home, and ISIL going gangbusters, literally beheading people in Syria and Iraq, and especially persecuting Christians, I think David Cameron has little choice but to stand up and be counted, and I respect him for doing so, if a little bit late to the party.
This is a side effect of this whole diversity mentality.
It absolutely is. Diversity and open borders. You know, they called Enoch Powell, that was a politician back in the 60s, an extremist, a racist, a radical, for saying, you know, there were too many coming in too fast and we should send them back home. It was the sending them back home that got him labeled a racist. It has proven to be prophetic. Britain's a multiracial society. There are many Indians contributing happily. There are many Africans. There are many Jamaicans contributing happily. Some of them a little laid back and maybe into the drug culture, but who the heck cares? They're all contributing happily. And then there are those that come over and insist on practicing their own religion, running the towns according to their own laws, petitioning for Sharia law to be considered to be acceptable in the courts, and before you know it, you've got little fiefdoms popping up here and there where it's no longer safe to be British or even white.
Well, yeah, and then a lot of these folks are living off the welfare state. I mean, they're getting housing, they're getting food, they're getting everything while they're building this enclave, this cultural ghetto, where there is no inclusiveness and there is no diversity. So, you've got this diversity culture idea, which has been embraced to excuse bringing in people who completely oppose the diversity culture altogether.
Well, that's true to a point. The interesting thing about Britain is that the idle class, the folks who are, if you like, on the Bulldogs plantation as opposed to Uncle Sam's plantation, are in fact mostly white. As I commented on Stacey's blog, I lived in such a housing estate for a short while. I came out of the Royal Air Force until I had got a sound footing. A friend of the family found us a housing on the edge of what's called a council estate, that is government-owned housing, or what looked like Section 8 to us folks. I was on the edge of it. Thank God for that. It was full of drunken and lazy people who engaged in petty crime to top up their welfare.
Yeah, Anthony Daniels, who
didn't stay there long.
We talk about him a lot, writes as Theodore Dalrymple. Definitely talks about the underclass and that whole culture a great deal, and it is a byproduct of a combination of progressive priorities, and so is the whole diversity issue, and it all ties together. I mean, that's where we're headed. We're just letting people pour into the country, not because we want to help them, but because it seems like it suits the agenda of the people doing it to dilute the culture to a point where they are ensured a grip on power.
Right, and a grip on power on what? A grip on a declining power, frankly and unfortunately, because when you sap the vitality of a nation, when you basically pump its lifeblood into keeping afloat a set of leeches, eventually there's no vitality left. And that's not to say that all these folks are good for nothings. Given the right incentives, a lot of these will rise up. Just as with the Gingrich-Clinton welfare reforms in the mid-90s, the welfare rolls shrank, employment increased, government revenues increased too. It was an amazing combination, and it actually goes to show that in most cases, when the Constitution is respected, if government is split, that is to say the presidency and Congress don't belong to the same party, by and large, spending grows less or may shrink than when it all belongs to one party. The Democrats have proven that they can spend like drunken sailors, and the Republicans, when they have total control, have proven that with a combination of earmarks and cronyism, they too can spend like drunken sailors. And let us just remind people that, hey, in the case of the sailors, at least it was their own money, as Mr. Reagan said.
That's true. And, and the interesting thing about the reform that you mentioned is that you can train people, you clearly can train people to do nothing. The government's ability to affect the culture in this regard is that it can create enough entitlement to train people to do nothing. But that if you roll them back and you explain to them you're going to roll them back and you tell them what you're expecting in exchange for a declining amount of income from the state, you can retrain them to go to work.
Well, and not only that, we have we have all of these programs, all of which have very sudden cutoff points, such that it simply isn't worthwhile taking a job, because you may end up worse off, or at least your first, I don't know, $20,000 a year basically gets you nothing. You may as well do nothing. And so, if we're going to have some kind of welfare, let it be a declining supplement based on your income, or maybe even, shock horror, not have payroll taxes on your lowest tiers of income, so that you really get all the money. Just imagine if it was a simple flat tax with a major deduction for the first few tens of thousands that you earn, depending on how many members of your family. You then would have a real incentive to go out to work, and employers would have a real incentive to hire you, especially if payroll taxes were abolished in favor of flat taxation. But that's, hey, that would be a structural reform that nobody has the fortitude for. Democrats seem to like complexity because they can dole out favors and cut loopholes, and Republicans seem to like the favor factory too. It's been working for them. And this is why we have to get rid of all of those that like power and like the favor dispensary, as opposed to faithfulness to the Constitution. As always, remember that governments are instituted amongst men to protect these rights. And when it fails to do so, it's our job to alter or abolish it.
It's interesting that New Hampshire has a historically low unemployment. It's almost always lower than the national, and it's 4-point-something% now. And one of the reasons we have low unemployment in New Hampshire is because you don't get paid very much if you go on unemployment in New Hampshire. You can't live off it.
It's not. It's difficult to get.
It's difficult to get. It's difficult to keep, and you cannot sustain a lifestyle on it, which is the incentive to go find some kind of work. Now, that works. We have low unemployment because you can't live off it.
Yeah.
You just can't. And Democrats are like, oh, our unemployment's 4.4%, and we have a Democrat governor, or whatever it is. I'm sorry, I'm just pulling that number out of my head. It might be wrong. And we have a Democrat governor, and we have a Democrat House. But you also have a system where you can't live off unemployment. And yet you are talking about entitlements and helping these people and giving more money to these people, when the reason the unemployment is low is because people can't live off it. And
No.
And if they can't live off it, they're going to go get a job, or they're going to move.
Right. I mean, I'm all for a basic per capita payment, or especially a per capita healthcare payment that says, here's some money to go get something basic. You figure out what to spend it on, except you can only spend it on healthcare. Things like that, instead of vast, complicated programs that trap people in. And that's really the shame of the system. I mean, folks like Star Parker, who herself was long ago a black welfare queen, stand up and speak out and say, this is Uncle Sam's plantation. You do not want to be stuck here. The so-called leaders like the Justice Brothers are not doing you any favors. Get the heck out while you can.
Well, there's no advancement program unless you convince somebody else to rob somebody else of more money.
Well, exactly.
Sorry, I had to clear my throat. We're going to take a break because I can't talk for some reason, and I lost my voice. We'll be right back.
I'm going to ping Dan Dwyer one more time.
Scenic drives, but they're tough to enjoy when you're on your way to the doctor. Because Obamacare limits your choices, some will have to drive more than an hour to see a doctor. What's health insurance worth if care isn't there when you need it? Jean Shaheen voted for Obamacare, putting your doctors and hospitals further out of reach. Tell Senator Shaheen Obamacare is not working for New Hampshire.
Congress needs to end wasteful government spending, like the $787 billion of taxpayer money thrown away in the 2009 stimulus package. It may not have done you any good, but U.S. Senator Jean Shaheen's business interest made out to the tune of $78,000. No wonder she doesn't want to talk about it whenever the subject pops up. Call Senator Shaheen and tell her you're tired of wasteful government spending.
Welcome back. Sorry about that dead air. I was listening to Mike and not paying attention to what I was doing. All right, enough of that. Dan Dwyer is on the phone with us. Dan is running for the New Hampshire State Senate in what district?
District 11.
11. I know this. Yeah,
Merrimack, Milford, Amherst, and Wilton.
Well, welcome to the program, sir. Glad we finally got a hold of you.
Thank you.
All right, so you are in a 4-person primary? Is that 3?
I am.
You are. Okay, so let's talk about Dan Dwyer and what he... Now, you ran against Peter Bragdon last time.
Yes, 2 years ago, when the state, as many of you know, got redistricted, Peter Bragdon's old district consisted of 11 towns that included Bedford and not Merrimack, and Bedford, and it snaked all the way down 111 to even towns like Fitzwilliam. So the district was redrawn to 4 towns. Merrimack was added, Bedford was taken off, and it became a very tight, geographically very nice district in the sense of campaigning and getting people to know us in this area with Milford, Amherst, Merrimack, and Wilton.
And shouldn't districts be tight and well contained anyway? I always think it's a travesty when districts are drawn in with odd boundaries to try and get, some predetermined result, maybe a majority of Democrats or a majority of Republicans in the district. So was it a general improvement in districting, or was yours just a lucky accident?
I would have to call Senator Peter Bragdon an evil genius on this one. When the goal is to try to get each district to represent about 55 or 50,000 people, the snaking can be difficult. But in this regard, him having strong roots in Amherst and living in Milford, breaking off Bedford and Merrimack became almost common sense because both towns started reaching populations of 25,000 apiece. So breaking Merrimack off I think was some common sense, and then tying it in with the other towns just made it really, really good.
All right, so let's talk about issues. What are your top issues in this campaign?
The top issues are more of my theme of my campaign is being stopping the madness. The issues I'll rank in not any particular order, but the highest business profits tax in the country, the highest in-state tuition in the country, the highest medical cost per capita in the country. We have lost our way in New Hampshire. Democrat and Republican, you can't just blame the Democrats because they've been in power the last 2 years. If you look from former Governor Sununu down to Jennifer Horn, we have had a run of 15 years of New Hampshire not being the state that I was raised and born in. I was born and raised in Manchester. I'm age 51. My first president for voting was Ronald Reagan, and I do not recognize the state that I live in anymore.
So when you say it runs from John H. Sununu all the way down through Jennifer Horn, are you referring to the chairmanship of the Republican Party and its failure to impose any kind of standards, or are you referring to his term as governor, which was quite some time ago?
His term as governor was very good. The fact that the management of the party, from Sununu to Horn, you'd have to judge them. I mean, we are not liberal progressives in the Republican Party. We do judge people. We like valedictorians. We think doctors should make more than garbage men. We are capitalistic in a free market society. So, in all that being said, we go back. We need to judge people. We're comfortable.
And that means giving everybody the chance to excel, or as Limbaugh said, give everybody the chance to be the best that they can be.
Exactly.
Not that we want anybody to stay down. This is not about class. This is about the ability to transcend class by anybody.
That's right. And we judge athletes for being great athletes or poor athletes. We should judge politicians for being good or bad. My point is the management of the Republican Party for the last 15 years has failed. Am I right or wrong? Have we turned from a red state and a solid red state to a blue state?
We absolutely have, and it's likely
someone has to be blamed for that. And so you can't blame the workers; you have to blame the management.
Yes, you do, and their management style is bankrupt, as is the party.
I would make sure that we include Fergus Collin that list of failures.
Absolutely. Well, Fergus brought infamy and ignominy upon the party to a great extent. But, I do not understand why a party does not impose standards on its members and refuse to allow them to run as Republicans if they do not hew to those standards. We have a party platform. If you vote against the party platform more than, let's say a third of the time, that's a reasonable line, you shouldn't be allowed to call yourself a Republican. And when you're running in an election, in order to call yourself a Republican, not an independent, then you ought to be subject to vetting by the party.
I agree with what you're saying. So let me first off say that again. I agree with what you're saying. I support the party platform, point for point. However, I don't believe your premise is what has brought us to the failure part. What has brought us to failure is the lack of management instilling new membership. Whether you're a Rotarian, whether you want to join the Kiwanis Club, whether you want to join Democrats, Republicans, you want to join the Liberty Alliance, whatever group you want to belong to, you need to recruit members. And what the management of the GOP in New Hampshire has done over a decade is not recruit new members. This is why we're losing elections. We're losing elections because we're not getting enough Republicans to come out and vote Republican.
And that's absolutely correct. And they get out the vote software, and their lists have been abysmal the few years I've been trying to help in this state. And compare and contrast that with what the Democrats did under Obama, and even compare and contrast with what some of the independent Republican efforts have been. We've talked to Andrew Hemingway. We were talking to Aaron Day earlier. They can't coordinate right now because one's a PAC. But the work they are doing with Get Out the Vote software and recruitment software, this is the stuff the party should have been doing instead of wasting money on a consultant and a new website that didn't really buy them anything.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, Dan, give us some of your background. You were a town selectman.
I've been a town councilor in Merrimack for the last 5 years. I've won 2 elections in town, won very well. I beat Peter Bragdon 2 years ago by 59%. I felt like that was one of the reasons why, once he decided not to run again, I was going to put my hat in the ring. I've been I am a small business owner, own a small limousine company. I also own property, commercial property, and run property management and landlord, things like that. I have been a sales and marketing executive for 14 years on a company in Nashville called Shrink Packaging Systems. Married, 3 children, 27 years yesterday. Born and raised in Manchester.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. It's been a wild ride. I think I'm well rounded is what the best when people say, well, what do I bring to the table? I bring a life experience is what I think is my best asset.
Yeah, well rounded like a pebble going down the stream. You said a wild ride, that sounds like a great set of experiences, actually, Dan. So, how about a little bit on policy positions? What are you for or against, and what would you absolutely stand firm on?
Stand firm since the day I was 18 years old and was a political science major from St. Anselm's College. So in the class of '86, there will never be a sales or income tax as far as I have a living breath and a vote to make it count. If New Hampshire can't turn around this state of affairs that we have, that certainly would not be the way to go. I know a lot of other people feel like maybe we're the albatross in the union, and we need to go do what everybody else is doing. But that for me is always a bedrock of our financial future, not having a sales or income tax. After that, I got asked this during our GOP event on Monday about what would you do to bring in small business, and it's not what I would do in a general sense. It is what I would do in the big sense, and I related to the insurance industry. We hear a lot of complaints about Gene Shaheen's legislation that drove out 20-something companies, insurance companies, and coming down to we need to write legislation that brings 20 back. So if tackle what went wrong and admit what went wrong and rewrite new policies and new regulations or less regulations, if you don't make it easier for companies to do business here, then why do they come? And Along the same route, I'd say another policy question been asked about is right to work. Let me say I am for the right to work legislation, but I also ended on a bit of a downer. I can say sarcastically, but so what? What do I mean by that? You can't have the House be so split and have right to work passed by 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 votes, because no major corporation is going to cross the border and come in here based on our pendulum policies of a blue, purple, red state. The House passes right to work. Let's say that happens, and it passes by 5 votes. You just can't envision a big company coming in knowing that 24 months later the House changes hands and they repeal it. So things like that, it's common sense that we have to drive policy.
So we have to recruit people from the grassroots, recruit youngsters, and sell them on why conservatism is a good idea and grow the party. And
that's what's been lacking for 10 years, sir. Absolutely.
So in that case, obviously you espouse the right policies. And let me just ask you, so I think it was Meldrum Thompson had the saying, but guaranteeing low taxes only works if?
Finish it.
Finish it.
I heard. I went off. Say that again.
Guaranteeing low taxes can only be done if.
Oh, if you have low spending.
Boom. Yes. Exactly. You'll recall the time when Havenstein was on camera and said that the pledge to not raise taxes was fluff. The real point was the policies that allowed you not to raise taxes, which was his clumsy way of saying what Thompson said.
That's right. In spending, roughly $2 billion for 1.3 million people. Come on, folks. We can do a better job than what we've been doing. I've used this phrase many times. We should be considered a country club state. 1.3 million people should be easy to run. If we need to steal the Texas playbook from Governor Perry, then that's what you do. I use a sports metaphor. What happened after Joe Montana and Coach Welch and the West Coast offense? Around the league, everybody started copying it. What have people been doing for the last 10 years with Belichick and the Patriots? They now draft smart football players. They may draft a lineman and turn him into a linebacker.
All right, Dan, we got to cut our segment short. Can you give us some contact information real quick?
Oh, sure. Dan Dwyer for State Senate on Facebook. A lot of information there if you want to know more about me and my candidacy and what I'm about. Talking to Madness in Concord.
All right. Thank you very much, sir, for spending some time with us, and good luck.
Good luck.
Thanks,
right.
Guys.
We'll see you, Dan. All right, that's the end of the segment. Next segment is Maureen Mooney, who is also running for State Senate, and we're going to give her a call, and we'll have her on the line, hopefully, at the top of the segment. My name's Steve McDonald. I'm here with Mike Rogers. Skip had to skip out, but hopefully he'll be back next week. If not, we'll be here with Mike, and we'll be having a good time. So you guys stay tuned, and we will be right back.
New Hampshire is famous for scenic drives, but they're tough to enjoy when you're on your way to the doctor. Because Obamacare limits your choices, some will have to drive more than an hour to see a doctor. What's health insurance worth if care isn't there when you need it? Jean Shaheen voted for Obamacare, putting your doctors and hospitals further out of reach. Tell Senator Shaheen, Obamacare is not working for New Hampshire.
She tried to make us believe she was a fiscal conservative, but State Senator Nancy Stiles has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, she claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along voting like a liberal Democrat. She voted to raise your gas tax by another 23%, taking a bigger bite out of our wallets every time we're at the pump. And oh, how she drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now the Senate wants to pass a bill to prevent us from criticizing Senator Stiles' vote. Call Senator Stiles at 603-918-0553 and tell her that we're on to her wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell her to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is
GrokTV.